welcome into the show today. Thank you for making this podcast a part of your day. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, or if you're listening elsewhere, hit that follow button so this podcast shows up in your feed. Monday through Saturday, I appreciate all the loyal listeners, whether that's through YouTube or through the Reels. We've got almost 3,000 followers on Facebook. We've got over 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. So join the thousands and be a part of this podcasting journey with me, Minnesota Tim. We've got a lot to talk about today because even though there wasn't much to talk about yesterday, it's March, and some days you got something, some days you got a whole lot of nothing. And today we got a whole lot of something because there were a lot of stories released within the last 24 hours that we need to discuss. And first things first, J.J. McCarthy went on Up and Adams, which is a part of FanDuel Sports Network television. And he had some things to say about his health. He had some things to say about the opportunity with the Vikings. So that's going to be the first things first. But in a little bit, I'm going to react to the Timberwolves losing 3 of 4. And I'm also going to discuss the latest breaking news coming out of the Twins organization and the owners and all that nonsense that is going on there. So first, J.J. McCarthy on his health on K. Adams Show.
I was trying to translate what it means that you're here and you're the new addition, it's your first year. The knee must be doing pretty well, huh?
Fantastic. Yes. Fantastic. I mean, I would say I'm 100%, but you know, thank you. Cheers to that. But yeah, just staying consistent with the rehab process and not wavering from that, and staying disciplined with all the outside stuff and making sure I'm not chopping too much wood and doing all that fun stuff. So yeah.
How did it affect you? The recovery, the injury. Was there good in it? Like, how would you describe looking back on it? I'm not saying you're through it all. Like you're saying you're 100%, but what did that do to you?
It was an ultimate blessing because it's just such a time of stillness where you really get to reflect and introspect and find a routine, especially early on in this career and this profession. Like, it's huge for young guys to find that habitual routine that they can rely on and stay consistent with. So yeah, I would say that was the biggest thing for me.
There are so many reports that come out from so many different insiders, whether they pretend to be insiders or are actual insiders. And to hear it directly from McCarthy's mouth, what else is he going to say? He's not going to sit up there and say he's 85%. He's not going to sit on the show and say he's less than 70%. Of course he's going to say he's 100%. You ask any player, even if he's 15 years out of his prime, and you ask him, how are you feeling today? You know what they're going to say? I'm in the best shape of my career. I've never felt any better, and I'm excited to continue my journey. Adrian Peterson still probably says that. He's probably still thinks he could break Emmitt Smith's record if a team signed him. That's just the way players think, and it's just the way that their minds are orchestrated, because in all honesty, which this podcast is 100% honest 100% of the time, players have very delicate mental states. If there is something in their mind or brain that is a negative thought, that can completely tear apart any athlete in any sport. So what they say is the exact opposite. I'm 100%. I'm in the best shape of my career. I'm always feeling good. And that's exactly what we're seeing from J.J. McCarthy and his comments. Let's move on to his other answer, because this first answer to the first question was something that we would expect to hear from really any player. There's really nothing shocking about it. But this is what McCarthy had to say about his opportunity moving forward as the Minnesota Vikings QB1. Now, this is classic J.J. McCarthy. He is all about earning things and having the right mentality and doing things the right way because, as I've said a zillion times, and I'm sure I'll say a zillion more times, McCarthy bleeds and loves football more than any other player probably in NFL history. This guy is obsessed with the game. And you can tell based on his comments, based on his activities, you can tell by every single thing that McCarthy does that he is obsessed with the game of football. And if you are obsessed with the game of football, you are going to say things like this: I need to earn it. I don't want anything handed to me. And that's what he's saying in this statement. But what is fascinating about his answer, specifically to this question, is that the Minnesota Vikings have not promised McCarthy the QB1 spot. And what it also shows me is that, one, the Vikings even know themselves that McCarthy, coming off an injury where he couldn't participate in any season-long activities besides mental reps, know that McCarthy is a unproven quarterback. And that's what I've been saying all offseason. That's why they offered Darnold a contract. That's why they offered Daniel Jones a contract. And that's why they had week-long discussions and could revisit this discussion if Aaron Rodgers does not sign somewhere else. The Minnesota Vikings know the fact. The fact is that McCarthy has not played a single meaningful NFL down in the NFL. And if you call one preseason game versus the Raiders, in which he played pretty good against a vanilla defense, meaningful, then I don't know what to tell you. Because that is not a meaningful NFL down. If the Vikings, I don't even remember if they won or lost that game. It doesn't matter. That's how meaningless that game was. And it was valuable reps for McCarthy, but in terms of meaningful football, in terms of it mattering, in terms of the opponent specifically game planning against McCarthy to force him off his game, that game had none of that. It was vanilla with a capital V. So the Vikings know it. McCarthy knows it. The only people that need to come to grips with McCarthy being an unproven quarterback in the NFL are Minnesota Vikings fans. Because right now, McCarthy is all hope. It's all hope. There is not one meaningful fact or statistic that will tell us that McCarthy is going to step in seamlessly into the QB1 role and be a guy that can take a Super Bowl ready roster all the way to the Super Bowl and still the toughest division in football. So McCarthy knows it. The Vikings know it. And now it's time to come to a realistic mindset that although McCarthy will probably be the opening week starter, the Vikings have not told that to him. He still needs to go out and earn it. And let's say McCarthy steps into spring and looks awful, looks terrible. Not saying that's going to happen, but it certainly is a possibility. If McCarthy steps into spring OTAs and training camp and doesn't look the part, and Aaron Rodgers still has not signed with the Steelers, well, then those discussions are going to become realistic again. And that's why they were even a discussion in the first place, because we do not know yet what J.J. McCarthy is going to be. So you can throw all of these high school and collegiate accomplishments about McCarthy in my face, but the truth of the matter is this: he is still an unproven QB, and the reason why the Vikings had discussions with 3 other potential starting quarterbacks in the NFL this offseason, they offered contracts to 2 of them, is because the Vikings are not sure on what McCarthy is going to be yet. Alec Lewis sent this out on X just an hour ago. It says this: Kevin O'Connell was asked in January whether or not J.J. McCarthy was the starter. He didn't answer it directly. It's January before any workout, so why would he? Still, it's very clear, and McCarthy seems to know it, he must have a good spring and summer in all regards. If McCarthy wants to be QB1, he is not going to be handed the position. It is not going to be a free handout, which tells me, and which should tell you, that he is an unproven quarterback in the NFL. I cannot believe that is some sort of hot take. It seems like the most obvious take in the world that McCarthy is not yet a proven QB. Yet I post this on one of my reels, and what everybody is telling me is that, oh, he did this in high school. He did this in college. You're a Vikings hater. Oh, you're so negative. Get off my feed. Get out of your mother's basement. How are you married? Who bred with you? It's crazy. Kevin Seifert, also a Vikings insider, says this: I wouldn't expect the Vikings to tell McCarthy in March that he's their starting QB. And not just because there's a chance they revisit Aaron Rodgers later this spring or summer. They haven't seen him in a single football activity with teammates in 227 days. All we are spitting is facts. And you can put on your fanboy hat and pretend that McCarthy's a proven NFL quarterback, but reality is reality. And what reality is telling us is that McCarthy is not yet a proven NFL quarterback, and that's why the Vikings had long discussions and offered contracts to 2 other quarterbacks, and had discussions on 3 of them about coming back to the Vikings because they don't know what McCarthy is. Anyways, let's move on to a different topic, because that's the topic that keeps on giving. I could talk about that for days, which I have talked about for days. The Timberwolves lost 119-103 against the Indiana Pacers, and the Pacers were playing everybody. The Timberwolves just lost to the Pacers recently, and they didn't play their 2 best players. Miles Turner, Tyrese Halliburton didn't play. And they're even Pascal Siakam didn't play. The Timberwolves lost to the Pacers backups in overtime recently. But this was a big loss because the Golden State Warriors have struggled a little bit. And when I mean struggled a little bit, they lost 1 game against the Hawks. Steph Curry was hurt. We don't know when Steph's coming back. So this was an opportunity to tie the Warriors in the NBA standings and become a 6th seed, which would allow the Timberwolves to get out of that play-in spot. But right now, they're 41-32, tied with the Clippers, currently in the 8th seed, and 1 game back behind the Golden State Warriors. What is so interesting about this Timberwolves squad is their inconsistencies and the way that they look like a top 3 team in the Western Conference during a 2-week stretch. And then they look like a bottom feeder NBA team during the next 2-week stretch. The Timberwolves just finished recently an 8-game win streak. And then what happens next is they lose to the shorthanded Pacers in overtime. They lose to the Pelicans that are having an awful season. Then they beat the Pelicans by 40 during the Joe Ingles game. And then they lose to the Pacers again by 16 points. A complete blowout. And here's the truth about the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are identical to anybody's golf game. Golf game. Yeah, you heard me right. And here's why that is. If you golf or you don't golf, you'll probably understand me regardless. If you golf, or players that golf, you hit a few good shots in a row. And after you hit those few good shots in a row, you're thinking, oh, I figured it out. I figured out this complicated sport called golf. And I'm going to just take this on to the next hole, and I'm just going to be a phenomenal golfer from here on out. I've got this figured out. And then the next hole is a blow-up hole, where everything that you thought you knew went completely out the window. Those feels that you thought you had right. Those feels that you're like, oh yeah, par, birdie, birdie, par. Here it comes. Went completely out the window. And the Timberwolves act the same way. During their 8-game win streak, I pulled up a quote from Dante DiVincenzo. It says this, March 14th. We have matured as a team. We are still maturing as a team. Collectively, we were able to have those conversations. We're more comfortable with each other and what everybody's good at. That sounds like a player that's talking like we figured it out. We know each other. We've matured as a team. We've got this chemistry solved. And the reason why it's taken us 3/4 of the season to figure this out is because of chemistry. But now we've got to figure it out. And now we're just going to soar into the playoffs. And then they lose. And Dante DiVincenzo has another quote after their loss against the Pacers last night. We got to play harder. We got to play with a sense of urgency. We are playing like we have SHIT secured, and we don't. It needs to turn around. There's a few things going on with the Timberwolves. One of them is what I just said. The Timberwolves are everybody's golf game. They are inconsistent. They think they have it figured out during their 8-game win streak, and then they lose 3 of 4 games against bottom feeders in the NBA. And now they're going down again. Now they got to figure it out. And they're going to win games again, and they're going to be making comments like, oh, we figured it out. We got the chemistry going. Everything's good. And then they're going to lose, and we're going to be like, oh, what happened? Oh, no, I thought we had to figure it out. I guess not. The Timberwolves, let me pull up these stats. They scored 103 points against the Pacers. They went 9 for 35 from the three-point line. That would be stupid ESPN ad. What the heck? Get off my screen. 25.7%. This ad is still up here. What the frick is going on here? It's ridiculous. All right. 25.7%. Anthony Edwards went 1 for 11. Mike Conley 1 for 2. Julius Randle 0 for 2. Naz Reid 3 for 6. Josh Minot 1 for 1. That's what you call bench mob time. Dante DiVincenzo went 1 for 7. Nickeil Alexander-Walker went 2 for 5. Jalen Clark went 0 for 1. Overall, as a team, they went 9 for 35. Anthony Edwards can take credit for most of those misses. Here's the deal with the Timberwolves. They are trying to be a three-point shooting team, and they're not one. Who on the Timberwolves roster lets go of the ball and you think it's money every time? Nobody. When Julius Randle shoots a three, I'm not thinking that's going in. When Jaden McDaniels or Mike Conley or even Anthony Edwards shoot a three, I'm not thinking that's money. Same thing with Nickeil Alexander-Walker. The only guys that I trust to shoot the three and believe it's going in are Dante DiVincenzo and Joe Ingles. Those guys are pure three-point shooters. But the NBA has become a three-point league. And the Timberwolves still have not adapted their players to fit the three-point contest that every NBA game has become. So what you see are players on the Timberwolves acting and pretending to be three-point shooters when they clearly are not. And that's why you see them go through these inconsistent runs in the NBA this year. Because there's weeks where they're on fire, knocking down every three, everything's looking good. And then last night against the Pacers, and recently, they've hit a cold stretch because they are not consistently good three-point shooters. You look at the Pacers stats from last night. They shot 37% from the three-point line compared to the Timberwolves' 25%. The NBA basically boils down to one stat these days. Who can shoot a better percentage of three-point shots? The Pacers made 4 more threes than the Timberwolves. They both shot the same amount. That's 12 points. The Timberwolves lost by 16. If the Timberwolves make 4 more threes, it's a tight ball game down the stretch. It's as simple as that. But the problem is that the Timberwolves do not have good three-point shooters on their roster. And they're trying to play this three-point game that every NBA team plays because 3 is worth more than 2. And then what you saw last night is that the Timberwolves could not hit a 3. And when you don't score easily, your defense suffers. So they gave up 119 points to the Pacers. Dante DiVincenzo said it in his post-game comment. We had no energy. We're acting like we got it secured. The Timberwolves missed shots. And when you miss shots, it impacts your defense greatly. And there's no energy on the floor. And that's what you saw. So the Timberwolves, as much as they thought they had it figured out during their 8-game win streak, they didn't have it figured out. They are an inconsistent NBA team because their three-point shooting consists of inconsistent players shooting threes. Anthony Edwards wants to pretend he's Steph Curry. And there's games where he looks like a phenomenal three-point shooter. And there's games where he looks the part. You know, statistically this season, he's shooting 39.5% from the three-point line. Looks great on paper. But last night he went 1 for 11. 7 for 19 total. It doesn't win you games. And that's why you see the Timberwolves so up and down this season. Last story to touch on. The Minnesota Twins and their ownership. This comes from Dan Hayes and Ken Rosenthal and Brittany Girolai via The Athletic. The Twins ownership group have accrued in excess of $425 million of debt, according to multiple people briefed on the sale process, which is one of the highest figures among MLB's 30 teams. Something that most people forget about during ownership debacles and money spent on teams and different things like that is that the owners of every single professional franchise are business people. And they are going to spend what is good for their bottom line. And the Minnesota Twins have been an embarrassment in the past few seasons in money spent on players. And here's the reason. The reason why is that the Twins ownership group has collected $425 million of debt. And I was listening to John Bonus on the Power Trip Morning Show on KFan this morning. And he was saying that the Twins ownership group, they have a lot of investment in real estate capital and houses, hotels, stuff like that. And during COVID, that business crashed. It stalled. People weren't spending the amount of money they were spending on that kind of stuff during COVID and after COVID. So the Twins collected $425 million of debt. And they're trying to sell the franchise for $1.7 billion. They bought it for like $40 million, so that's a pretty good investment. But here's why the Twins ownership group, the Pohlads, have not been spending money. It's because they have no money to spend, and their bottom line is in the negative by $425 million. These Pohlads are business owners, just like any business owner. You lose money, you're losing millions, you spend less, so that the bottom line is not impacted as greatly. So I get the frustrations by Twins fans because the owners aren't spending money and because they are not putting together a product on the field that can consistently win games. I get the frustration. But you also have to understand that it's not your money. It's not my money. The Pohlads own the Twins, and they can spend their money however they want to. And it's our right to criticize them, but they don't have to appease the fans just because they are being criticized. You think this is the first time that they've dealt with criticism throughout their entire lives? They're used to it. It just bounces off their shoulders by now. So you look for reasons on why the Twins haven't been spending money on players during free agency or trading for guys. Well, here's the reason why. It's because they're in debt. Their other businesses have not been thriving like they were in the past. So now, the hits got to come somewhere. You got to take money out of somewhere. Got to spend money. Got to spend less money elsewhere somewhere. And what they're doing is they're paying players less. They're bringing in AAA talent to become starting pitchers on the Twins. And hopefully they can somehow have career seasons. That's the truth of the matter. So, and as frustrating as it is to watch the Twins struggle and put together a terrible product on the field, this is why. The owners are in debt and don't want to spend more money than they need to because they're struggling. So, anyways, there's always a reason for something. And that's the reason for this. Thank you for watching this episode. If you're making this podcast part of your day, hit that subscribe button. If you made it this far, congratulations. You got a $500 Visa gift card if you click that link right there. Do I sound like every other pop-up? Don't accept all those cookies. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching the show and for making this podcast a part of your day.